Okay, about to weigh my bag before we start our hike. £25. Okay, bag 2. 24 pounds. Well, somehow we haven't really figured out the ultralight situation with our food. So this is our food bag. That doesn't fit in any of our backpacks. 8.3 pounds.
Without the camera, 27. And then camera's about 3 pounds. So
Woo!
30.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we are here, this yellow dot, and we're going today up to Magog Lake, which is right there. And then tomorrow we'll head up to Lake Magog, which is right by Assiniboine Lodge for 2 nights.
It looks like a volcano. The clouds coming right out of the mountain.
We started the hike at Mount Shark, which is in Kananaskis. The start of the trail is pretty flat and easy with a wide path. This hike is a bit unique because it starts in Alberta, in Peter Lougheed Provincial Park, and then crosses into Banff National Park, before crossing into Mount Assiniboine Provincial Park in British Columbia.
We started the hike around 6 p.m., hiking through golden hour most of the way. Our first rest stop was at Turbulent Creek, which had a good view of Cone Mountain. Our water was getting pretty warm because it was more than 30 degrees Celsius out, so we put it in the glacial river to cool it.
There's an elk by the riverbed there.
You used to be able to bike this path to Assiniboine, but you can't do it anymore because there's a really high risk of startling a grizzly bear when you're moving so quickly. This is the first snowshoe hare we saw on the trip. This was the first one I'd ever seen, and it was really cool to see how big its white feet were.
So we arrived in the dark as usual because it was 13K instead of 8K.
The map told us.
So we're just unpacking our food, putting it in the bear bin, and getting some water.
Because we're out of water and we're hungry and tired. We're not going to eat a real meal tonight. We're just going to have like roll bars, nuts, snacks. But we definitely need water.
So originally we booked 2 tent pads and had 2 separate tents, but we ended up all just staying in the 3-person tent and leaving our stuff outside because we ended up only bringing 1 bear spray, so we didn't want to be on separate tent pads. The trail was quite well maintained. There weren't any like water crossings or anything, like it was all built bridges. In the morning we went to Magog Lake just after sunrise, and it was one of the most beautiful lakes we've ever seen. After checking out Magog Lake, we headed back to the campground and made breakfast. One of the really nice things about these established backcountry campgrounds is that they have bear lockers, so you don't have to carry a bear bin.
We were very slow this morning, and it is now 1 o'clock, and we are just leaving the site. Well, we slept in until 9 and then had a hike to Magog, which is pretty far. It was like 2K. Then we had to get water, eat, relax for a minute. So. And the food and cooking zone is pretty far from our spot too, so it was a bit of moving around. But yeah, I think the hike to and from Magog was 2.6K, it said. So yeah. It was worth it. Magog was so nice. Yeah, it was gorgeous. our first view of Mount Assiniboine off in the distance.
The first stretch of the trail from Marvel Campground is an open meadow. There is a ranger cabin and a horse corral here. It was cool walking through the start of the pass with the mountains towering around us. There are a lot of signs for horse paths and rules for horses. This next section of the hike is called the Assiniboine Pass Horse Trail. But we didn't see any horses.
You actually have to take the horse trail in August and September, as the hiking trail is used frequently by grizzlies during this time.
This was really cool when we stumbled upon a grouse, and it had probably a couple week old babies with it. So we got to enjoy watching the mom and babies, and we also got to see one of the little ones fly up into a tree.
I was surprised. I didn't think they could fly when they were that little. And there was a bunch of these like tiny little butterfly piles that were cool to walk through.
Assiniboine Pass took us by Gibraltar Rock and Cascade Rock, which are sub-peaks of Mount Cotley. These mountains are located on the Continental Divide. The water flowing down the mountain was crystal clear.
A little bit of a avalanche zone here. All the trees are completely bent down.
This was in mid-July and there was still some snow around.
A bit of a storm off in the distance.
And then we made it to the border of Alberta and BC, which is the start of Mount Assiniboine Provincial Park. This was our first closer up view of Assiniboine.
This big open meadow was really cool to walk through. Fairly quickly after crossing the border into British Columbia, the mosquitoes started swarming. There was a lot more water around. We didn't see too many animals, but we sure saw a ton of Columbian ground squirrels. We passed hikers who told us there was a grizzly bear close to Magog Campground, so we were making extra noise. Cool echo.
The first view of Magog Lake. Apparently there's a grizzly just down there.
A couple hours before we arrived, the grizzly bear had walked right through the campground past the food shelters, so everyone had seen it. The ranger said it was down around Magog Lake for a while, but then headed away up a creek.
Hey, we made it to our site just after 8, so we've got about an hour and a half of light. And we're gonna set up the tent and then get cooking.
Rach and I were a little worried about the bear, but after seeing how many people were around at Magog Campground, we weren't as worried.
I made a dehydrated meal, grilled chicken pad thai, which was alright. Rachel and Lauren made Annie's mac and cheese using olive oil instead of butter.
So we forgot to print our permit, so we are writing with a permanent marker we found on an Annie's box and putting it in the permit spot so that we don't get kicked out.
Next morning, we got up as early as we could to do the Niblet. Normally, we would do this like for sunrise, but sunrise was at 5 a.m. and it's like an hour plus hike, so we wouldn't be able to get up that early after hiking all day.
It was really nice to leave most of our heavy things behind and just take one bag between the three of us.
There was this really cool like hut or cottage that someone lived in for like 30 years right on the lake. We did some nice pictures and videos of Sunburst Lake and Sunburst Peak. This mountain just like looked really cool. It's so jagged and unique looking.
The sun was shining and it was definitely a hot day for a hike, but we really loved the blue sky and there was a good amount of shade on this trail until we got up into more of the open spot.
Everyone was hanging their backpacks in the food shelter instead of just leaving them in the tent vestibule, because apparently the marmots have been coming in the night eating people's leather boots, cork on hiking poles, and sweaty fabric on backpacks and clothes.
The hike up to the Niblet was very nice, with constant views as we got higher up. This is easily one of the nicest hikes we've done in the Canadian Rockies. Surprisingly, as we got higher up on the rocky ground, the mosquitoes got worse. This area was snow covered just a few days prior, so we think that all the mosquitoes had just hatched once it melted.
I got nearly 200 mosquito bites in just a few minutes while taking some of these shots, as I had to keep the camera still and couldn't swat mosquitoes away.
It was really cool to see all the 3 lakes at once, Magog, Sunburst, and Cerulean, as well as the surrounding mountains. The Niblet is the lowest viewpoint and might be the best view. We hiked up higher to the Niblet, and you could hike further up to Nub Peak, but we chose not to as we didn't think the views would get any better and it looked like a storm was coming in.
Can't get me now.
We are at the Niblet, enjoying a little snack of some dried mangoes and enjoying this amazing view.
Highly recommend the mangoes from Costco. It's like $15 for a huge bag.
And they're so good.
It was an extremely hot day, so we had our bathing suits and towels so we could swim at Cerulean Lake on the way back down.
No. Cold.
The water wasn't as cold as other glacial lakes, but it was still too cold for me. I'm a bit of a chicken with cold water.
Okay, after the quick swim, there's a thunderstorm coming in, and the mosquitoes are absolutely insane.
Murdering
Just got like 100 bites. But it's thundering a bit, getting a bit dark. Apparently the only tent in this area with like 8 tent pads.
The mosquitoes were really bad still, so we were wearing our jackets and mosquito nets. But luckily, a bunch of people had citronella and the coils and thermocells, and the mosquitoes pretty much left the shelter once people had everything going for 20 minutes.
Our lunch was our mee goreng, and it's definitely one of our favorite meals in the backcountry.
And it cost like $1.
So even better.
And then we went down to Magog Lake for the first time.
The lighting was beautiful and the reflection was really cool. As you can see, there were still mosquitoes around and they were constantly swarming us. Hey, I'm thirsty.
I thought you were opening it in the pot. Hey. How many mil do you think we need?
1.2 liters.
Today Rachel will be on the way to fill it. This was the cooking shelter that we used. It was really close to our tent pad and it was a really nice setup. There were about 6 big picnic tables and it was covered. There were lots of people always using it, and it was a great way to meet other people and just relax after time on the trail.
It was nice, there was a water tap right by the shelter as well that was piped from another lake.
We still had to use our filter on the water, but it was really convenient to have water access right there instead of walking to a creek.
We got up as early as we could the next morning because we had to hike out about 28 kilometers.
Lauren and Rachel are just finishing packing up the tent stuff. Now just organized all our bags and our food. It's about 6:45 and we are going to start hiking Wonder Paths very soon.
We brought more food than we needed. This is all our leftover extra food.
It's 8 a.m. exactly. We're all packed up and we are heading out.
We noticed when we woke up it was hazy and we weren't really sure what was going on, but by the time we kept hiking, we realized that it was smoky.
Preparing for the downhill with some KT tape.
I think the storm that we saw the day before had started some forest fires nearby, so the smoke kind of got worse throughout the day as we got higher. The smoke did make the conditions pretty cool for lighting. We decided to take Wonder Pass on the way out, which is about 3 kilometers longer and an extra 200 meters of elevation gain. Everyone who had done it already was saying how amazing the views were, and it was worth the extra hiking. This way took us out past Assiniboine Lodge.
There are cabins here that people can book with some luxurious amenities, including 3 meals a day. There is a helipad here as well that you can take to get to the lodge or campground. Assiniboine Lodge manages the campground and the climbing huts in the area.
The mountain ahead is called the Towers, and to the right is Magog Lake. As we got further up the pass, Assiniboine was covered by forest fire smoke. Near the top of Marvel Pass, there are a ton of larches, which will turn yellow in the fall and lose their needles.
The views were just consistently amazing on the hike out. When we walked through the first part, we saw a lot of beautiful wildflowers, and as we approached Magog Lake, the bugs were still around.
The bugs were so bad in this section because it's all recent snow melt. But right as we got down towards Magog Lake, the bugs just completely left us.
So right when we crossed Wonder Pass and started going down, it basically went from like a wetland to completely dry. So there's almost no mosquitoes on this side, but then in BC there's millions swarming. So I think this is like the desert side of the mountain, and then BC has the rainforest side. And walking along Magog Lake for 5 kilometers is just so beautiful. You get constant views of this perfectly blue water and just wildflowers all around.
It's like a bear got some beetles out of his pine tree.
Times and places are all in who you share 'em with, and it's life, and the point is enjoying who you share it with. Joy is who you share it with. And the weeks and the weekends are keeping close who you spend them with. And in time, what you find is the time is who you spend it with. Joy is who you share it with. Who you share it with. Who you share it with. Yeah, now it's a moment, and a home is who you share it with. I believe what the point is enjoying who you share it with. Joy is who you share it with. Who you share it with. Who you share it with.
18 pounds?
Nice, plus the bear spray.
25.6. 19 pounds.